Buckle up because today's guest is bringing 35 years of sales and marketing firepower to the mic. Bob Tharp isn't just another sales leader. He's a revenue detective, slicing through the noise to uncover and fix the real issues holding businesses back. And from crushing it as a top-performing rep to leading high-stakes sales teams, he's seen it all. He's got zero patience for fluff. He moves with urgency. And he knows that the real growth happens when sales, marketing, and ops play nicely together in the sandbox. So if you're ready for some straight shooting wisdom on demand gen, conversion, and sales execution, this one's for you. And hey, don't just listen. Jump into the conversation. Hit me up on LinkedIn with your biggest takeaway and make sure to subscribe to the Coach2Scale YouTube channel. Let's elevate our coaching and leadership skills together. Let's go. Welcome to Coach2Scale, how modern leaders build coaching cultures. I'm your host, Matt Benelli. Join me as we build a community of like-minded professionals who share the belief that effective coaching improves the performance of every team member. Our mission is to help leaders become better coaches. The Coach2Scale podcast is sponsored by Coachum, the world's first AI coaching execution platform that leverages evidence-based coaching to increase quota attainment. And with that, let's get started. Today's guest is a straight shooter with over 35 years in sales and marketing, specializing in complex solution sales and demand generation. His approach just isn't about hitting targets. It's about diagnosing the real issues stalling revenue growth and fixing them fast. He's crushed it as a top-performing rep, and he's built and led sales teams at large and mid-sized management and IT consulting firms for decades. Currently, he's a principal at Innovative Business Solutions and a vice president of consulting services at Fluent Consultants. Bob Tharp, welcome to Coach2Scale.
Hi, Matt. Thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure's all mine, and looking forward to the conversation. I appreciate the pre-recording banter between Patriots fans and Chiefs fans. That's a lot of fun. So, Bob, let's get right into it. We start off with a myth-buster question, and the myth-buster question is this. There's myths persist for a reason. There's always some truth to them. But what's a myth when it comes to coaching and leading sales teams that you've heard time and time again that you believe is misguided or maybe even complete BS?
Well, I'm not sure about specific myths, but I think it's a mistake to, if you don't take a holistic, long-term approach to the situation. So a lot of times organizations will look at a situation from a myopic point of view. And if you do that, I think you're going to lose opportunities to improve not only the individual's performance, but the team's performance as well. And so I approach coaching as I would any other consulting engagement. So first, I'm going to do my best to understand the current situation by analyzing current state. And I do that by both looking at the macro and the micro. Micro being, what's the organization's business strategy, goals, and value prop, and then come down from that to more of the functions that drive revenue, which are sales, marketing, and then related ops. And what's going on in those organizations and those functions that could possibly impact the individual that I'm coaching. And then I get to the individual level. And so what I'm always looking for is, first, is this a good fit for the individual in this role? Because if it isn't, then there's no reason to go further. And secondly, looking for if they're controlling the controllables. And if they're not, I help them to do that. And thirdly, are there anything out of their control that is causing that underperformance? And that goes back up to the holistic approach, because if there is something outside of their control that is causing that subperformance, that's obviously affecting others in the sales team as well. So you're not only helping one individual improve their performance and maybe get to the right role, you're also helping the overall team as well improve performance.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'm going to dig into that a little bit. So what's an example of controlling the controllables? What's an example of that?
So I think, the obvious answer to that is, in the most basic, are you around, around activity? Are you actually doing the things that you need to do on a regular basis? And when I talk about controlling the controllables beyond that, that is, when I talk to people in the selling role, a lot of times when I say control the controllables, that means not only what you can do within the system that you're operating in, but every system, every company, every sales organization has its strengths and weaknesses. There are gaps there that a salesperson sometimes needs to close on their own. And so I encourage salespeople to think like leaders and to act with a sense of urgency. And so to give you an example of that and how I share uh, my thoughts and make them hopefully stick with people is I'll give an example. Like when I was a manager in a large consulting organization, I was a part of the management consulting group, and we sold all the traditional management consulting types of services, but we were really focused a lot on program and project management and building out project management offices and so forth. And so I was getting us a lot of good meetings, but we were never getting to the next phase, the next meeting, where they were one and done types of meetings. And these meetings were taking months to get. Great opportunities. And we would come back from these meetings, and the team would, lament the fact that, the client just doesn't get it. They just don't understand, which drives us nuts, right? Yeah. And it's kind of like, well, if the client doesn't get it, whose fault is that? Right. I mean, it's ours, right? It falls on us. So, I had two options. I could have either done nothing and just hope, that something good would have happened, something would have changed, which is unlikely, or I could take the initiative and enact change, and which is what I did. So I pulled the pursuit group into a meeting, and first thing I did is get them to understand whose fault that is that the client doesn't get our value proposition.
That's a mindset, right? Right, Bob? That's a mindset change.
Absolutely. And that's the biggest win in this meeting, because it's like anything else. If you don't believe that, you're accountable for something or you have control over it, then you can point the fingers everywhere, right? So we got to that conclusion. Then we came up with two changes of how we were going to pursue opportunities. First is to create a tool that quantified the probability of success of a client's project. So going down a list of questions around best practices of executing on projects, and then assigning a score to each one of those. And at the conclusion of that, we could say, based on our analysis, you have a 60% chance of achieving all your goals with this initiative. And then you can then extrapolate that out into the ROI of the initial forecast for that project. And so what that did for us was it took a function within projects, which people don't always appreciate, that project management, program management can really determine, the outcome of a project, because it's just not something they think about. So it put shape and structure around that for us. And then secondly, it was about asking questions. So we would ask the clients if they had a risk mitigation strategy, and the larger the project, the more likely you're going to run into risk. And so we would ask them, do you have a risk mitigation strategy? And they'd always say yes. And we would know that they never did. And so, but we couldn't go anywhere with that, right? Because you can't challenge that answer. So we determined that we need to start asking that question a little differently. So instead of asking, do you have one? We started to ask questions around, what do you like? What do you dislike about your risk mitigation strategy? What do you think you should change? Because a lot of times companies spend less effort on that and they end up regretting that on down the line. So in making those two changes that came after the mindset, it it ended up resulting in more opportunities, more closed business, because we had deeper, richer conversations with our clients.
Well, I love the question. What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? And it totally opens up a real candid conversation, because I would imagine, Bob. I mean, my experience has been no one says I like everything about this X, and we don't like anything
Right.
about everything, right? So there's always something to talk about versus, do you have a risk mitigation strategy? Right? Oh, yes. Okay. Then you start asking those questions, and it's like, you seem like the pushy, aggressive, cheesy salesperson if you're doing it that way. And then kind of going back to the mindset, uh, yeah, you can't blame the customer. You can't blame the prospect. Or, I grew up with the adage, "There's no bad prospects, only bad salespeople." And or another way of
It's
saying
true.
that, my kids didn't like it, but it's always your fault, no matter what. Whatever bad thing happens, it's always your fault. And once you get there, you can start to figure out how to be better. For lack of a better way to say it. Question for you there, though. So whether it's a risk mitigation strategy, Bob, or something else, how do you drive accountability um, with with your people, whether it's with your clients or if you're leading a team with your people?
Yeah. So I always start out with fact based, evidence based conversations, whether that's with a client or with someone on the pursuit team or in sales, and then I help everyone. Well, not necessarily the client, but within your internal team, help them understand. Like I said before, that think like a leader and have a sense of urgency about things. So don't just ignore what's happening, um, and ignore the key questions that are top of mind for you as you have these interactions, whether it's with a client or the team. Because if your intuition is telling you to ask those questions and you don't, typically that's going to come back to bite you. So what I try to help people understand is that, again, going back to, every organization has its strengths and weaknesses and gaps in what they're doing. And as a sales professional, especially, your role is to make sure that you close those gaps, right? Because if what the client, or if what the company offers sold itself, and the demand generation marketing sold the product without sales help, they wouldn't need you,
Right.
right? So a lot of it is taking the best of what you have, understanding what you don't have, and then creating solutions around that in a way that can be institutionalized across the whole group.
Bob, I had a boss that I worked with years ago at Oracle, and it was let's say it's an existing client. The existing client wants to buy more of what they own. Let's call it they need to buy $100,000, and so we'd be in the forecast call, and my boss would say, if he was doing a skip level with the rep, he would say, "Yeah, that $100,000 deal that you're forecasting, that the empty chair could close that." Um, your job, that's why we pay you a lot of money here. Your job's to differentiate yourself from the empty chair. Um, but yeah,
I like
it's like, yeah, right. So if it can sell itself, we don't need you. What are you doing to make the news? What are you doing to, make something bigger? Help solve a bigger problem. We solve big problems here. So I love where you,
I like that. I'm going to use that for certain.
so, okay. What I heard you say is, don't sweep problems under the rug. They're going to come back and bite you down the road. So a lot of leaders do avoid, um, having that, you know, confrontational conversation, that uncomfortable conversation. Confrontational is not the right word, but it's
Right.
uncomfortable sometimes. So they say, "Oh, I'll get to it later on. I'll get to it on Friday. Oh, I don't want to mess up the weekend. I'll do it on Monday." And they just keep kicking the can down the road with these uncomfortable conversations, and then they build up into something bigger. How do you suggest people prepare for having that tougher, uncomfortable conversation that they know needs to happen?
Yeah, I think I first of all, I appreciate that feeling because we are working with human beings here. So, but I mean, the way I'm built, I kind of like to get at that stuff quickly because I don't want to be thinking about it. But but how I typically prepare is like I would for any type of consulting engagement. I gather the facts and evidence of the situation. I determine what I want to get out of the conversation, and I also at the same time think through how do I make this conversation as productive as possible so that we aren't going down rat holes. And because most of these conversations, you know, can get uh, uh, derailed because they're so emotionally
Mhm.
charged. One of the things that I still use the guiding principles of today is I went through a class many years ago when I was with a consulting organization called Crucial Conversations.
Yeah.
Have you ever
Love
heard anything about that?
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So in crucial conversations, what it is all about is how do they give you a framework for having these types of conversations that uh, uh, help to avert um, you know a, uh, a a meeting that is unproductive because these subjects are so emotionally charged. And what I took away from crucial conversations, and you of course always you know mix in your own style, is number one, start out with stating facts that are undeniable, undisputable, because you don't want to get into a discussion of what
Right.
facts are true and what aren't. So know the person you're talking to as well too. So because they can be undeniable, they can still try to deny them, but you got to know
Oh,
who
that
you're
never
talking
happens, Bob.
to.
The
Yeah,
i.e. every night on television, the news, but
of
yeah,
course, of course. So so uh,
undisputable
uh,
facts.
yeah, undisputable facts, and then you follow that up with typically something like uh, given this, it feels like you could use some help in this area. Am I wrong? And so what you want to do is you want to avoid those emotional triggers that will set somebody off, and you never get that conversation back on the tracks
Mhm.
again. And I think this helps you. I think this helps you get started quicker because it's these are more it helps you have more productive conversations, and that there's ongoing they help to promote an ongoing uh, strong relationship of open conversation. You want people to come to you and say, "Hey, I'm having to struggle with
Yeah.
this," rather than, "Hey, listen, here are your numbers. What are you going to do about it?" Right? And and have the empty chair, empty seat conversation with them. And I tell you, I recommend everybody read this book. It's a book that you can read and try to incorporate this into your own style. But I about a week after I took this class, had a really emotionally charged personal situation that I had to deal with on the phone. It wasn't about with my family or my wife, but in I used this model and it worked to perfection. I mean, this conversation could have went anywhere, and it went probably the conversation was less than 5 minutes.
Yep.
And the conclusion of that, the result was our relationship got stronger. I got what I wanted. They got what they wanted. And man, I walked away from that thinking, well, first of all, when I came to this class, I thought, man, I'm a pretty good salesperson. I know how to do this stuff. And, but try to keep an open mind. I started using this and it really works.
You know what? It really works. And I think that's a huge takeaway. And I hope people see that regardless of where you are in your career, where you are in your leadership journey, taking these classes, reading these books, listening to these podcasts, you take something very basic. I mean, you could go online and like I need to have this tough conversation, help me out. And you'll get something. And then you just need to follow it. You just need to follow it and trust the process. But it leads me to something because, I'm going to ask you a question about AI here in a minute. But before we get there, like AI doesn't have emotional intelligence. What role does emotional intelligence have in having these candid or difficult conversations with somebody?
I mean, it's everything. I mean, it's the difference between having success and not, and having success that is sustainable, right? Because it's a classic. You can win the war and lose the battle, right? And so, you can have somebody change their behavior for a short period of time, but already being checked out and looking to leave. And that's where organizations have a lot of turnover, and they don't see that as a red flag somehow. And also, you can translate this to having, critical conversations with your clients as well. And I have those all the time, and they, my clients see that as what true partnering actually is, having frank conversations that are based on reality and evidence, and helping them to try to think through what's going on in their business, even if the conclusion of that is that what I'm offering at the time isn't necessarily what will resolve their issue.
Yeah.
And so that give and take, as long as you're genuine about it, you can, in my mind, genuine and tactful, you can challenge people, really deeply.
Yeah. And what you just said there, getting, like in this case, the prospect or the client to think about it, but they're not going to think about it if they're emotionally charged. Right. And so my business partner, gives a great example on this, and he uses the example of if you can't find your keys and you're running out the door and you yell up the stairs, hey, where are my keys? And your spouse yells back, if you put them where you're supposed to, you'd know where they are. Or instead
Helpful.
you say, hey, honey, yeah, I'm running around. I know you are too. I lost my keys. Any idea where they are? Now your significant other will actually think about where your keys might be instead of basically punching you back in the face. So it's that emotional intelligence, reading the room, understanding the situation, and getting the other person to think about what you want them to think about. Is what I take from what you're saying.
Absolutely. I mean, it takes more effort. It takes more thought. But it also takes checking yourself.
Yes.
Too, right? It's kind of like, whoa, Bob, what outcome are you looking to achieve here? Do you want to just try to prove something, or do you want to actually, achieve something here? And that's a question that, we should all be asking ourselves all the time. I've had a lot of training around how not to do that. And in the beginning, really difficult. Do it a lot better today than I did, but I still have to have a little voice in my head when I get triggered. Oh, no. This is too important. You don't want to show how smart you are, Bob.
Yeah.
Now I'm saying that in jest, of course.
Yeah. As Chris Voss would say in his book, Never Split the Difference, you want to get the response, that's right, not you're right.
Exactly.
There's a difference there.
I understand.
So AI, all the rage these days, right? It's changing the world in many, many ways. What are people like that you're working with that have impressed you, how are they leveraging AI these days?
So, being in consulting and in particular IT consulting, I've been through a lot of hype cycles of new technology, and when I look at AI, I think the there's going to be very quickly a lot of mainstream uses for AI. Today, most organizations still don't know what it is and how to leverage it because of the hype, right? It's kind of like uh, um, so how to best use that in a selling situation is there are platforms like Gong.io. Are you familiar with
Of
Gong?
course, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so Gong is a platform that records client interactions across email and voice. And what it does then is it um, creates recommendations for what to say and what not to say to achieve the outcome you desire,
Right.
and whatever that is. So I know organizations that are trying to do this. I think there's three things that you need to consider about a platform like Gong. First of all, it requires enormous amount of data to be able to do that, for the system to do that. So the system has to learn. So if you don't have, I would say at least 30, probably 50 reps, I'm not sure that Gong makes a lot of sense for you right now. There may be other ways to spend, your resources. Secondly, I'm not sure when Gong makes those recommendations, if they are including a kind of a holistic look at things across each channel, because we know that the selling process starts the first time the client is aware you exist,
Mhm.
right? So if they see an article, they see an advertisement, they come to your website. I'm not sure if Gong includes that, because when you're looking at what people are saying and not saying to be successful for a certain outcome, you don't know where, if you ignore where the client journey before they get to you, then you're kind of working with half measures. And then the last thing I would say is that, any of these types of revenue intelligence platforms still are just a tool. They require human action, interaction. They still human coaching to make sense of it. We all know there's art and science to sales. And so this is the science of it. You and I both can say virtually the same thing, and you may be successful 30% more time of the time than me because of the way you're delivering the message. It could be what you're accessing, your pauses, facial expressions, all those different types of things. And I think that's what a good sales coach will help people understand is, okay, here's what you focus on. Here's what you need to improve on. This is just giving us a sense that, if you try to cut these behaviors out, it's going to help. But if you really want to go and move the needle, here's some things you can do. And I'll end with this. You've probably heard of Sixth Sense.
Mhm.
So Sixth Sense and Apollo, those types of platforms are really trying to aggregate buying signals of your clients. And a lot of these buying signals are traditional buying signals that have been out there for a while. They're just aggregating and putting them into one spot, like on LinkedIn. If someone moves from one job to another, and and you're targeting certain clients, and you see a new CEO come in,
Yep.
and things like that. It could be if there's certain technologies you're targeting. I mean, when I was at another consulting organization, if 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 a client had Microsoft SharePoint, and they had it for a year, we wanted to talk to
Yeah.
them, because this was an application that, in really a platform that was easy to use and really easy to screw up. so you can get it into a tangled mess. And we wanted to talk to those folks,
Yeah,
right?
trigger events, right?
Trigger it.
If this, then that.
It-
Yep.
So what these do even better now is they help you understand who's coming to your website, even if they're anonymous, coming through your phone. So if I work for a company, but I'm using my personal phone, it's hard. It used to be, it can be really hard to understand, who this person works for. Now they can tie all that together and go, okay, Bob Tharp came to your website and Bob works for Fluent Consultants. And so that's obviously a lead. They can also kind of do some really kind of more vague type of buying signals, looking at people out on the web and what they're accessing of their partners, because there can be large partner networks that they're looking at, that people are looking at certain white papers and things like that. But to date, I think for larger organizations, I think these make a lot of sense because they're very, mature in their processes and in their systems. I think for smaller organizations, you might want to focus on the blocking and tackling first, and then move to these.
Yeah. At the end of the day, they're tools, right? Whether it's Gong or
Right.
Sixth Sense or any other type of conversational intelligence or propensity to buy tool, you still have to execute, right? There's a Peloton over here to my right. It's a great tool, but you got to get on it and you got to ride it. You got to, or else it's just, you just spend money on it and it looks good over there as a clothes hanger. But yeah, so you have to execute, but that's a very good start. And look, I really wish when I was in the throes of building and leading teams that we had a conversational intelligence tool. And what I would say to anybody out there, regardless if there's one person on the team or 1,000 people on the team, get your manager to listen to, if you have Gong, for example, get your manager to listen to that call with you and break it down together. Because that right there is just going from where you are to someplace a little bit better than that, right? A little at a time. The tools are fantastic, but there has to be collaborative effort to using them. And, I think that's what I'm hearing a lot in what you're saying. It's not going to do the job for you.
No.
So, maybe this triggers an idea, but what's a painful lesson in this business that you learned along the way that was like an aha moment that really shaped, how you approach your business today?
Yeah, that's an easy one for me. I began my career with a leader in the consumer products goods industry, and at that time I was just really appreciative of anyone that was willing to hire me. Because coming out of college, I was pretty green, and so great company, great reputation, treated employees really, great, did a lot for the community. About halfway through my time there, I knew I was bumping up against the culture, that I was different than most people in that organization. And I didn't really have a mentor or a coach to help me through this. I was my mom and dad are middle class. They are blue collar. So, the only guidance they could give me when I started my job, and me and my brothers were the first generation to go to college, was work hard and good things will happen to you.
Yeah.
Right. And so that was my thought process. And that is certainly true, but there's other elements that you have to take into consideration as well. So, I'm with this company for a long time. I'm always a top performer. I'm doing all kinds of different things that nobody else are doing in the organization, and not really getting anywhere for it. and I'm questioning what am I doing wrong? And then I was promoted to a new channel for the last 3 years. Where I was with the company, the last 2 years of which I was number one in the nation. And one of the reasons why I was number one in the nation 2 years running was that I recognized an issue um, uh, that I built a predictive model around to remedy, because our competition was just killing us, stealing tens of millions of dollars every month from our distribution. And so we were told, hey, here's what you got in your tool bag to combat that is our brand. Isn't our brand sweat? And so our competition is giving away margin, giving away, bribing people, giving free everything. And so I built this model appending our micro strategies data internally with store specific KPIs, demographics, and internal traffic flows, and a whole bunch of neat things like that. Allowed me to be number one in the nation 2 years running. First year of that span, I thought, geez, I'm still young. I thought, Matt, my boss is going to carry me around on his shoulders and hail me as the greatest, person to sales ever. And possibly the company would even name a wing after me at the headquarters.
Right. Of course.
And so, spoiler alert, that didn't happen. But so there was always a rewards trip for the number one salesperson. That year, my group didn't send anybody. They were the only group in the whole company that didn't send, so I didn't get to go. The next year when I won it, I got laid off. And so I thought to myself, I said, what's the key learnings? Now, to be honest, I was ready to leave anyway. And they treated me really well. So this isn't a, whoa, I'm a victim. It's really a paradigm shift and a light bulb, finally going off. Is that, Bob, fit is critical to success. And this is an organization, a sales organization, who values compliance more than maximizing revenue. And then I started to see things. Oh, so that's why all sales leadership are really just managers of the status quo. They're not really leading and driving real sustainable change. And so that really, now, not like I didn't make other mistakes in my career, but that got me to thinking that, you need to go out and find an organization that values who you are, somebody that's transformational, that, will do almost anything and work themselves to death doing it. And so, I guess that would be the key lesson early on in my career.
Yeah. I mean, because we all have been told, or a lot of us have been told, work hard, study, get good grades, good things will happen. But not all the time. I mean, to finish that axiom, work hard and good things will happen if you're in a structure that values the way you're approaching it.
Exactly.
Because if they value conformity over revenue generation or over innovation, the fit's not there. And that's got to be a huge kick in the teeth. You perform at the highest level 1 year and your group doesn't get a slot at President's Club. The second year, your reward is you get released back into the economy. Thanks a lot. Right? Thanks for playing.
Box of steak knives.
Yeah. But you know what? That's a powerful lesson. And that's the reason why I asked the question, because I'm sure that was awful at the time, but I'm sure that drove you for many years. That just,
well, yeah, because it was, I was still pretty new to the business world, and I kept asking myself, why why doesn't the fact that I'm doing things that are creative and getting real results for them not of value? What am I doing wrong? And you know, really, what I was doing wrong is I wasn't a good fit in the organization, and so when that happened, I mean, it was, to be honest, one of the best things that have happened to me in my career.
Yeah. I can see why. No, really, I hear those types of stories a lot, and certainly have my own, and that's certainly what drives us. So, Bob, what's going on now, right? What are you doing? What are you doing these days? I mean, you have your company, Innovative Business Solutions. You're principal there. You're VP with Fluent. What's keeping you busy? What are you most excited about?
Well, first of all, I'm that person who has found what really jazzes them. So I love what I do. I mean, I get up every morning loving, working, helping mid-sized companies to really, move the needle. And when I look at what I'm doing at Innovative Business Solutions, there's two things that, in my experience, are abundantly clear to me relative to the mid-market. The first one is that most mid-market companies leave a significant amount of revenue on the table, and for a variety of different reasons. We won't go into them today. We can if we want, maybe over a beer sometime.
Sounds good.
But and secondly, in order to claim that revenue, reach down and pick that revenue off the table and put it in our pockets, it normally requires improving the alignment, integration, and performance across sales, marketing, and related ops. And if you think about the difference between large company sales function and a mid-sized company sales function, the large company has a system in place that allows you to essentially plug and play reps. So a new rep comes on board. They can be successful relatively quickly, and then sustain that success over time. And there's a real method, a mature method around that process and systems support, as well as measuring the likelihood that person will be successful, right? So you can have reps that are average or below average anywhere else that have great careers in those situations, right? In the mid-size space, those organizations really don't have those systems for the most part. They are relying very heavily on the individual talents of each salesperson. So if one of their top performers leaves, that really leaves a hole in the organization. So what we try to help those organizations do is to build those systems that kind of mimic what the larger companies are doing. And we do that by, doing the typical analysis, but it's more holistic across sales, marketing, and operations, which always has tentacles back into enterprise strategy and goals and metrics and things like that. So most of the time we're starting with something simple. It could be building a data-driven demand generation system, could be confirming that the value prop that you're promoting is actually relevant to your client base or target, as well as, is it really your value prop? Are you messaging something that doesn't make sense? But everything we're doing has ROI tied to it. And having a career in sales, I mean, I'm very biased towards marketing that isn't able to measure itself. So everything we do is measurable. When you can see that needle move, I mean, it just still excites me.
Well,
I mean, I love
that's great. I really, and you can tell that, you're excited about it. So if there's a mid-market company or any company out there that feels like they're leaving revenue on the table, and B, they don't have that alignment across sales, marketing, and relevant ops. How do they get in touch with you?
So, I mean, you can give them the email, but you can always do it through my LinkedIn. Send me a message through LinkedIn. You can just ask a simple question or two if you want to. You can, ask for a Teams meeting, however long you would like that to be. A lot of times we can find opportunities for improvement in an hour and a half meeting, and you can take those and run with them yourselves, or we can help you to do that. I mean, also there's things, I mean, if you want to learn more about kind of our thought processes around things, I've got an article about our revenue creation health check, which kind of gives you our thought process of how we look at things. Now, we right size everything for the client in the situation, and of course we start where the client wants to start, right? And so you can send me, and if you want to kind of self-evaluate yourself, I have what I call a revenue opportunity assessment on my LinkedIn that you can access, and it asks you ask a lot of questions, and at the end it grades you out on what your maturity is with regard to a revenue creation. And obviously, the more mature you are, the more successful you're going to be, that more profitable you're going to be at that. And it'll give you some sense, and it may be just a confirmation or a validation before you even reach out and go, yeah, this, either you. I've seen people take it and go, and I've seen other people take it and say, well, I didn't even think that these things were connected.
Yeah.
So,
Well, we'll point to that. And if you're okay with it, we'll point to that health check or what you just talked about that's in your LinkedIn profile, so that people, if they want to get a look at it, they can. So as we move to close, a couple of coaching questions, Bob. Because we're the Coach2Scale podcast, we're trying to build a community of like-minded people who care about coaching and developing and achieving success through others. And we also bring guests on that care about that, like yourself. And usually people who care had that behavior modeled for them somewhere along the way. Who is somebody whose coaching has had an impact on your career and kind of how you approach things today?
well, I wish I had a single person or two that I used as a coach, but as I mentioned earlier, I came from a family that really had not had much exposure to white collar sales, so they couldn't really help me. And so it was really just work hard and figure things out on your own. So what most of what I've learned is twofold: from the school of hard knocks, and the fact that I've had the good fortune in consulting to work with a lot of very smart people that have been very successful in their careers. And I'm a person who is constantly self-evaluating and asking the why behind things, and not just the first why, it's the second why, the third why, the fourth why. And okay, yeah, you say this, but your face is telling me something different, so you've asked some really good questions around motivation and what's driven you and what changes. So that's where I've learned most of what I've learned about myself. And the three key learnings that I think came out of it probably mid-career is, be who you are. Don't try to be somebody else. You can spend a lot more energy trying to be somebody else, and it's a lot more stressful, not as fun, and you're not going to be as successful. Number two, trust your instincts. From the very beginnings of my career, I've always had really good instincts. I've always, I've been a student of human nature my entire life, understand how people think and what drives them to behave. And my instincts have been, well, don't just not do anything about this, do this.
Right.
and it's usually been successful. In the beginning of my career, I was more tentative about that. And then lastly, we've talked about it before, is the most critical success factor that trumps anything is fit, right? In the early parts of my career, I thought, even though I guess I wasn't listening, I thought that I could overcome culture, right? Culture eats strategy for for lunch. So I would get in companies, I would have some success, and I'm going, I'm going to change the way this company thinks. And it it took me a few scars to learn, Bob, until you're the CEO of a company, you really can't change the way that company uh, uh, operates culturally. Now you can make minor changes to that, but those were my key learnings. I mean, I guess my advice to anybody is, especially at the beginning of your career and out throughout your career, find people that you respect that have taken different paths to success in business, and make sure you meet with them on a regular basis. That could be quarterly, and learn from them.
Uh, I think that is a really good place to leave it. Find people who have achieved success in different ways and meet with them consistently, over your career. Like that's super, super important. And so weren't the 3 key learnings you shared: be who you are, trust your instincts, and always make sure that where you are is a good fit for you. Bob, we covered a lot of ground today, and I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much.
You're here.
Great. And for everybody out there watching and listening, thanks for doing so. Please engage on social media. Let us know you're out there. Let us know what you like. Let us know maybe what you don't like. And most importantly, let us know what you'd like to see and hear more of. We want to bring guests on the show that can help you do what you're already doing, that hard job. We want to help you make it just a little bit easier and help you make you a little bit more successful and get you where you want to go. So until next time, coach them if you want to keep them. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Coach2Scale: How Modern Leaders Build Coaching Cultures. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at coachem.io. That's COACHEM.io. And follow us on Twitter at CoachemNow. See you all next week. Thanks for joining. And remember, coach them if you want to keep them.